Hey everybody, I'm back from Thanksgiving break and here with another Life is Strange video. Today we're going to be doing another character deep dive, this time into Nathan Prescott, who I think is one of the most interesting characters, especially from the original game, and I think the series as a whole. Now, a heads up about the future of this channel. I don't mean far future, I mean like the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling for winter break, the sort of winter months, and I will be recording in a few random spots, but I will keep the weekly schedule going. That's not going to change. I will do my very best, and if it will, I will either post it on my Twitter, which is in my bio below, or on the community page on this YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get into a character breakdown of Nathan Prescott. Nathan Joshua Prescott was born on August 29th, 1995. He has the same star sign as Max, which is a Virgo. Something interesting is that it says he was born in Fort Lauderdale, which means that despite owning most of Arcadia Bay, the Prescott family is, assumedly, from Florida. This also tracks as Nathan constantly calls Arcadia Bay a shithole, so it's entirely possible that they lived in Florida, had to move due to financial reasons for, whatever it may be, and ended up sort of buying in on this small, cheap town in the middle of nowhere. And that makes a lot of sense, especially with how sort of opportunistic they make the family out to be. I think it makes total sense for them to get into some hot water in Florida and move all the way out west. Now, what's interesting is that even though Nathan is born in Fort Lauderdale, his family has a lot of roots and a lot of connections in Arcadia Bay, as I was saying. So for example, he donated an entire dormitory, the Prescott family, to Blackwell Academy. He also has a lot of influence with Principal Wells, which is how Nathan is able to get away with a lot of things at Blackwell Academy. On top of that, there are many rumors talking about how they might even have their hands in the police in some way or another, which is interesting. And then on top of that, there is the Pan Estates development. Basically, the Prescott family wants to take a certain chunk of land and turn it into this sort of estates resort kind of thing. It's very similar to an idea that's presented in Twin Peaks, where the owners of the hotel, it's been a little bit since I watched it. I'm kind of on a hiatus right now. I started season 2 of it, and that's kind of started going off the rails. But how they're trying to sell to the Norwegian investors all this land, they're trying to burn down the lumber mill. It's sort of like a diet version of that, because all it is that they want this land, but it's protected by, I believe, some sort of Native American control or something like that. It belonged to the natives, which is interesting because if you look at my cut content video, it's very possible that there was some sort of supernatural element to the development of Pan Estates, especially with it being on Native American land, and how originally the game had a lot more of a spiritual, supernatural influence when it came to the land and the characters. A lot more than we got in the final version. In terms of his family, we know that Nathan is the youngest of the Prescott family. We don't know much about his siblings, however, we do know that he has an older sister named Christina. He also refers to himself as Nathan Prescott III, which is interesting, and it's also in a condescending manner. It would be interesting to see what his other siblings, if he has any more than Christina, are like. How they turned out. Maybe some of them are, maybe one of them is the black sheep of the family. They don't talk to them anymore. You never really know, and I think that's something that would have been very interesting to explore. Nathan has been going through psychiatric treatment for at least 5 years, and we know this due to a letter that can be found in episode 4. And this is for good reason. We'll get a little more into his mental health struggles later, but other files within the school reveal that he is very, very troubled. For example, he has had several crude outbursts, that's how they word it, as well as him throwing objects, I believe a whole desk, at a teacher, at his English teacher. Lighting things on fire, just generally being a nuisance. Things that would get anyone else kicked out of such a prestigious academy. At the same time, it seems he has some sort of relationship with David Mattson. Both David Mattson and Nathan Prescott accuse Rachel of dealing drugs to other kids. Something else that confirms Nathan's relationship with David Mattson is in a note that he wrote. He said, "David M. always asks what's going on in my head. David helps me follow those he follows." That really implicates a deeper connection. I don't know about you guys, but to me, that really comes across as David almost trying to take a sort of familiar, sort of father figure role, trying to help him out. Another thing that adds to some of the information in my cut content video about the supernatural relationship between the Prescott family and, the perhaps Native American culture, spirits, whatever it is that Nathan tried to steal the Tobanga totem from Samuel. And that once again plays into many things from that cut content video where I discussed how there was an entire cut set of dialogue between Max and Chloe discussing what it is. It's important to the culture, spirit animals, things like that. And then on top of that, Nathan saying in a trailer that he knows the storm is coming. There was a whole, I really truly recommend you just check out that video because it paints a very interesting picture about what the Prescotts may have known and what originally they may have been, how they may have tampered with nature in order to actually cause the storm. In Life is Strange Before the Storm, when we see Nathan, he is very different than what we end up getting in the first game. He's constantly bullied, he's not confident, and he's just sort of an uptight, annoying kid. He's not this sort of threatening, not even imposing, but just threatening figure that he is in the first game. He has no sort of street cred with the other students. No one else respects him. The other thing is he's not a part of the Vortex Club. And at this time, the Vortex Club was still an anti-bullying group. And Victoria also hadn't joined it yet. And it is pretty much safe to say that when both Nathan and Victoria joined the Vortex Club, they were able to sort of evolve it into a elite social group, the one that we end up seeing in the first game. Known friends of Nathan include, surprisingly enough, Rachel Amber. If Chloe decides to defend Nathan, Rachel will say later that it's one of the things that she likes about Chloe, basically admiring the way she stood up for him. And that sort of implies a connection between the two. On top of that, we know through the Vortex Club parties, as well as just the rumor mill in general, that Nathan and Rachel were on at least speaking terms before her disappearance. Hayden Jones, in the first game at least, is one of the very few people to actually defend Nathan. He refers to Nathan as sort of a voodoo doll, saying that everybody kind of takes shots at him and he doesn't really care what anyone thinks at the end of the day. Nathan is his friend and he trusts him. As loyal as he is, I don't think he really sees the issue, but then again, when you're part of the sort of 1% group, you don't really realize it, I suppose. He describes him as a fun person to hang out with and just generally a chill guy, which I truly can't imagine. However, in the timeline where Max is sort of in that preppy group, she's friends with him as well. So maybe he is a chill guy if you're not on his bad side, but I don't know. As we know with another one of his very close friends is Victoria Chase. Now, in Before the Storm, they weren't exactly close. However, you can somewhat imply that they were. There are connections there, but I don't see it as being a concrete thing to say they were friends all the way back then. But we do know later on that they are like glue. They are in the same classes, they are constantly with each other, and they're both the leaders of the Vortex Club, which to me implies that when Nathan joined the club, maybe simply to join an anti-bullying group in an innocent way, Victoria joined around the same time, and we know from the Vortex Club deep dive I did, that she had ambitions to change the Vortex Club into an elite group. And it's entirely possible that she either felt sympathy for Nathan or saw that this kid's loaded, he's full of money, that she needs to sort of get him under his wing, and that she needs him for this quest to turn it into an elite whatever group, which is interesting to think about how she essentially took Nathan under her wing. Now, Samantha Myers is another known close friend of Nathan Prescott, especially in Before the Storm. She defends him a lot. She's pretty much always with him, and she has some sort of romantic interest in him. She constantly defends him to Chloe. She also encourages him to go out and do things, to do the play, all sorts of things. She's clearly very, very close to him, and we'll kind of circle back to her because her addition in Before the Storm is very interesting to me, especially with the implications of what, Nathan ends up becoming. Another interesting fact from Before the Storm is that at this point in time, Nathan doesn't do drugs. He is not featured in Frank's logbook, which, once again, to me at least, confirms that he only got into drugs, he only got into the sort of elite mindset of I'm so much better than everyone else after he joined the Vortex Club and Victoria took him under his wing. Victoria almost molded Nathan into what he is to an extent. She didn't turn him into a maniac. It seems like he was already having trouble. We know that Nathan's GPA is a 3.7, and his school file has been heavily modified, assumedly at the request of his father, who funds a lot of the school's activities. In terms of Nathan's romantic relationships, it's kind of interesting. He has a clear lust for Rachel Amber. Our sort of witness for a lot of this next stuff is, granted, it is Mark Jefferson, who I will admit may not be the most reliable narrator, especially when it comes to Nathan, considering the whole taking advantage of him, grooming him to be his sort of heir apparent, whatever crap, trying to get all his money so he can do his sick photography. But according to him, he says flat out, Nathan was in lust with Rachel. That's why he chose her to be his model to try and impress Jefferson, to try to do what he did. However, he screwed up the sedation and ended up killing Rachel. Now, according to Nathan, this was accidental. In his phone call to Max, he says that he never wanted to hurt Rachel or anybody, which Nathan is clearly someone who has issues. I think that's an understatement. His relationship with his father, or lack thereof, is a big motivator in a lot of his actions. So, trying to seek approval from this new father figure, that being Mark Jefferson, by doing what he does and trying to be like him, being a real artist like him, and then accidentally killing Rachel, makes sense to me that it could have been a complete accident. Now, that doesn't justify what he did. Kidnapping and drugging someone to get the approval of your demented father figure is never okay, but you can at least understand that he never sought out to murder Rachel. Now, this next romantic interest is one I'm saying purely because I think it's BS, and I kind of want to just flat out say personally, I don't think it's the case. There's a lot of people who see Victoria and Nathan together all the time and assume that they are dating in some way. I have to hard disagree with that. They very much have a sibling or even... I have to hard disagree with that. Sure, there's times where I think Nathan says, sure, Nathan opens an email to Victoria with, "Hey, gorgeous," things like that. However, I always read it, and my friend Emma will agree with me, I always read it as almost as if Nathan was gay and this is his girl best friend, whatever, that they sort of talk in that preppy West Coast kind of, hey girl, hey gorgeous, that there wasn't any sort of connotation underneath it that he was romantically or physically attracted to her, in any way. And if you talk to other people, they always say that Nathan and Victoria are like brother and sister, they're inseparable. And if you go along with my idea of Victoria taking Nathan under her wing when he joined the Vortex Club, you can see how that sort of becomes the sort of big sister, little brother, or at the very least sibling relationship. Count that with the fact that Nathan does not have a good relationship with his family, and I feel like that is a perfect recipe for this sort of strange, close, sibling-like friendship. And like, yes, Victoria and Nathan are very, very close. There are several examples of photos of them at parties and things like that, but the way I've always seen them is as very, very close friends. Victoria is aware of Nathan's mental problems and tries to accommodate him the best that she can. A lot of people assume inherently that the relationship between them, their friendship, is one-sided, that one doesn't truly care about the other, that Victoria is using Nathan for the money and Nathan maybe using Victoria for whatever reasons. But I think my idea of her sort of, maybe at first, seeing, hey, this loser kid with a ton of money just joined this club that I'm trying to overhaul, I'm gonna be friends with him. And then along the way, learned more and more about him. But I think the fact that she knows about his mental issues, and it's beyond just seeing Nathan talk to himself in the bathroom or him saying something strange and thinking, oh, he's got issues. It's implied that he actually sat down and talked to her and opened up about his feelings to her. And that is something that if he didn't care about her and she didn't care about him, I don't think that would have happened. She's also very aware of how his family treats him, which is yet another example of the level of trust that Nathan puts in her. And then Nathan does care about Victoria. For example, after Kate's attempt, he actually goes to her room and comforts her while she cries. Nathan also defends Victoria if Max decides to take the photo of her covered in paint. Now, the other interesting thing, and another thing that I feel reinforces how this friendship works and that it is mutual, is that Victoria talks about how Nathan has these freakouts. And she basically admits that while she cares about him, it is too much, which shows that this is a healthy enough relationship where she can say, I cannot deal with this right now. Nathan, I care about you, I support you, but I cannot do this. To me, that reinforces that this is a comfortable relationship. She is not afraid of him. He trusts her. I feel like it is a genuine friendship at the end of the day, not anything romantic or anything that is predatory. Nathan is in room 111, and there's a few interesting things about his room throughout the first game. For example, he steals Max's photos, her selfies, if she reports him in the very beginning of the game. Nathan's phone password is 0829, which is his birthday. There are letters from Nathan's father that can be found in his room. Basically, it's about his outbursts at school. This is how we know about many of them. But there is an utter disconnect between his father and Nathan. He doesn't seem to correlate the fact that his mental health issues are what are leading him to bursting out. He simply pacifies them through throwing money at the school. When Max enters Nathan's room, she basically says that this is creepy and way too clean, which falls into the stereotype of a psychopath-type character. In his room, he has photos of tortured subjects, dead animals, even an injured Pompidou, even a dead Pompidou, if Max were to throw the bone into the road, causing his death. There's also a photo of Chloe drugged when that whole thing happened, which I believe the encounter with Nathan drugging Chloe is somewhere before Rachel's disappearance? I'm not too sure. I didn't want to talk about it without being fully certain. I feel like it is somewhere in that realm of, between Before the Storm and the first game, not too close to either one. If you search through his computer, you can actually find a very nice email from his sister, Christine, who she encourages Nathan to stand up to his father. And the final romantic relationship I want to look at here is with Samantha. Depending on your actions in Before the Storm, Nathan and Samantha seemingly get together. You can hear them in the hospital and they're being all jokey, talking about a date, things like that. Well, she doesn't really exist. Well, she doesn't get mentioned at all in the first Life is Strange game. Now, beyond the real reasoning of why is that the fact that she was created for Before the Storm, if we want to look at it from a lore perspective, it's entirely possible that Samantha could be Nathan's first victim of the whole drugging thing. Now, the reason people believe this is because specifically in the timeline where they are together, they talk about, they're in the hospital, you can overhear their conversation, and Samantha mentions that Nathan was trying to take photographs of her when this accident happened, which led a lot of people, ringed a lot of alarm bells in people's minds because of Nathan's obsession with photography and tortured subjects. And they imagined what could have possibly happened to her. Now, her name is not in the darkroom, it's not featured anywhere in the binders. However, it doesn't necessarily need to be if she was the first victim of Nathan. It's entirely possible that he maybe tried to do something with her involving photography and drugging her, and that is sort of the thing that brought him and Mr. Jefferson together, and that's when he takes him under his wing. Or maybe he attempted to do something, she freaked out and was able to get away and just moved away. Either way, I think it's interesting that she entirely could be the first person that he ever tried to do that to. The other side of the coin is if they don't get together, she attempts to come on to Nathan. I don't know if it's implied to be in a sexual way or in more of a comforting way, but either way, she attempts physical contact with him and Nathan retaliates. But what results is her getting her ribs broken. And that's why she's in the hospital in this other timeline, which shows that Nathan is fully capable of violence in this point in his life, which I feel lends more credence to the idea that he could have fully taken advantage of her and attempted to have her be his first victim, which is very interesting. Now, in the timeline where Nathan dies in the first game, it's the timeline where you sacrifice Arcadia Bay. And it is because of Mr. Jefferson's whole evil plan. Nathan tries to call Max, and the whole thing with the phone and the time that he died doesn't make sense, but Mr. Jefferson takes Nathan's phone, tricks Max into coming there, yada yada yada. But what's interesting is this is where Jefferson fully admits he was just taking advantage of Nathan for the sake of his art, and that he buried him where no one will ever find him. So his fate is pretty much sealed in this timeline. Now, in the timeline where you sacrifice Arcadia Bay instead of saving it, I might have been mistaken earlier, Nathan ends up killing Chloe and is taken into custody. Simple as that. In the episode Wolves from Life is Strange 2, if Nathan is alive, you can find his mugshot in David Madsen's trailer. So really, at the end of the day, his story gets wrapped up fairly cleanly, if not a little unsatisfying. Basically, that, in the end, he's either dead or incarcerated. However, David seems to be concerned about Nathan getting out of prison. It's possible that he's maybe up for some kind of parole, or because of his age during the crime, that maybe he wasn't tried as a full adult. However, he was 17 or 18 by the time of the game, which means that he would have been tried as an adult. But either way, it's possible that his parole or some sort of hearing is coming up, and that's why David says very specifically, I hope he never gets out. So that's been like a deep dive into Nathan Prescott as a character. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I look forward to doing more of these. I'm debating on what to do next. I've been considering a BioShock one because someone suggested it. I've also been considering possibly doing something related to Fallout because it's one of my favorite series. We will just have to see. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning or evening or,